Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Data Scientist Podcast. Today, we have Ruben Sardaryan, a data strategy and executive coach in Toronto. Welcome, Ruben. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Stelios. My name is Ruben, and I'm a strategic advisor on the data strategy side. So I advise executives on high-level enterprise data strategy, and essentially I help them align the various forces in the organization using data as the medium. So I provide a view of data economics, both inside and outside the organization, how data works, how it creates value, and I help them create a view of data life cycles separate from technology life cycles. So that allows them to, in a sense, future-proof their businesses because technology comes and goes and data stays. So it's very, very important for every organization today to have a strategy of how they treat their data assets, what they do with data, and to look at it kind of apart from what's happening with the tech.
That's very interesting. So in terms of data strategy, you know that I've also been doing some work in this area. Do you feel that it is a popular field? Is it recognized as a thing? Or do people often confuse it with, I don't know, just data science in general or data science
I
services?
think it's a great question. So data strategy, I think it's gaining momentum, definitely, as a field, but it's still being defined what it is.
Yes.
So a lot of times when I see people talking about data strategy, to me it looks more like data tactics because people are looking where it's like data strategy in a pocket of a company. It's definitely like lots of people talking about data strategy. They're not looking at the big picture. So they're thinking about, okay, how do we implement a data warehouse or an analytics platform, or like build a machine learning posture, data science posture, but they don't necessarily look how holistically what happens with the information org-wide. And my definition of data strategy is that it is a set of values, rules, and principles that enable and inspire the overarching organizational strategy, business strategy, right? So it's a high level intentionally because let me explain it in such a way that so I look at the modern organization as a very complex computer where there's lots of systems constantly generating and transforming data, lots of systems and people. And people are also changing the system. So it's essentially this supercomputer, a very, very complex system, even like moderately sized organization, like mid-sized organization, it's a very, very complex computer these days. So I look at data strategy as rules of how this computer is being built, how you align the various moving parts, processes, systems. So if you have good rules, you end up creating an elegant and efficient computer. If you don't have rules, if it's a free-for-all, then you end up creating something very inefficient with lots of duplication, lots of moving parts that don't talk to each other. So imagine like if it was a system, a computer or a microchip, whatever, it's a complex system where designers of different components didn't speak about that, right? So in a sense, kind of it's very clear, kind of close. It has a lot of intersection with like enterprise architecture fields and kind of business architecture fields. But architecture, if it's not based on data, that architecture it never works, right? So it's like selecting whether you're going to buy a plane, a car, or a rocket or a train before knowing what you're going to transport and where, right? So the architecture has to be derived from your data life cycles. And so if you flip the whole picture and you put your data life cycles first, and then you look after technology, architectures, then the decisions become streamlined about the decisions about the technology. So in a sense, do you know the Kinevin framework? I think it's spelled as Signfin, but it's like I think it's Welsh for Kinevin. Basically, it's a framework about decision making.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into details on it right now, but to me, a sound data strategy, it makes decisions simpler in that framework, right? So it makes them from like complex to complicated, from complicated to simple, kind of it brings them down a level. Yeah, so that's how I look at the whole field of data strategy. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's a very extensive answer. And also I liked one term you used, data tactics. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate a bit on this?
So I guess, yeah, tactics would be for me the usage of information in pockets. Like for me, implementing a data warehouse would be a tactic. Yes. Or creating any data products, data pipelines, or even implementing specific policies like data governance, data management. So this would be tactics. These are things that are often required. Lots of companies need them. They need to be in place for certain things, but this doesn't give you the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. So that's the difference between strategy and tactics. That strategy is about the big picture, is about where you want to be in the next 2 to 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whereas tactics is about, oh, should I go with this vendor or this other vendor, right?
Yes, yes. And the time horizon as well, yes. So strategy is more long term.
Yeah, no, this makes perfect sense. And do you feel that and do you feel that most of the companies that you're engaging, do they really understand what data strategy is about, or do they because what I've seen is that quite often many clients, they really want some data science services, and then they might realize they need some data strategy. So are there like people who approach you and they're like, hey, we need a data strategy?
To say the truth, most people that approach me, they just want to do more and better with data, right? So they're in a sense, not everybody again is aligned regarding the term. Some people have heard the term data strategy and they understand different things. Some people, they just want to do, you put the pieces together for them. You say data strategy is strategically thinking about your data and how you extract value from it. And then things start falling into place. Some people approach me just to help with, like productizing data. And so they want to create a bunch of data products, or they want to see what are other ways to extract value from the information they already have. So I help on that front. And sometimes it's on efficiency. So I would say people who are in the high-level data strategy field, they play both offense and defense. Offense meaning like helping companies to grow their revenues, increase or find new streams of revenues, and defense being like making things more efficient, saving costs, like mainly things have to do like with internal management.
Yeah, I think there was this article on Harvard Business Review talking about this, right?
Yes. There's a kind of well-known article that talks about the two approaches. Yeah.
Offense versus defense. Yeah. And do you think that data strategy is relevant only for organizations that have reached a certain scale, or do you think that it's also relevant for startups and smaller businesses?
I think it's relevant for absolutely all organizations today, because every business is a data business today. Yeah. And earlier you start thinking strategically about your, pretty much most important asset. Probably after people, I would say data is the most important asset in the organization. Second most important. So if you strategically don't think about that asset, then you're likely going to be outcompeted by companies that are data competent, data savvy. And with the thing with startups is that lots of startups, they start as very, data-centric enterprises, very focused, and they have like a very small footprint when it comes to data initially. And then when the company grows, it grows in an uncontrolled manner. And new people come in, they start bringing in new systems. I probably need to talk about the concept of data-centric.
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics. I've also written a few posts about this, and it's in my book, like differences between being
Yeah,
data-centric, data-informed, data-driven.
yeah. So my definition of data-centric is that data-centric is an organization that has a single data model. Essentially, not necessarily, it's not one place where data is, but it's one model. Meaning, if you have information about your customers, you have it modeled in such a way that's uniform across the organization.
Yeah.
It can be spread over a number of systems. It can be federated, doesn't matter, but it's one model. So lots of companies, they start as a startup, as a data-centric company, but then they become system-centric. And that's the problem, I think, with 99% of companies today, because historically companies evolved to be system-centric or app-centric. So they just keep adding systems like, CRMs and ERPs and different cloud SaaS systems. And companies don't realize the price of complexity that brings. So essentially that it becomes the job of data professionals and IT professionals to create integration, to build this lots and lots of duplicates of data. So to me, that's a problem that's most companies have today, and it's a increasingly growing problem because data grows exponentially, and companies that don't realize this, they're going to pay the price. They're already paying a huge price for this.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And talking about all those things, I was wondering whether you'd like to share with us maybe some case studies, maybe a case study where everything went very smoothly, everything was perfect, and then a case study where things, from the onset were bad, or maybe even funny in some cases. I have some funny case studies, where I started working on something and then realized that, the data was referring to something else and no one had realized it, this sort of thing. So any stories like this to share, like both good and bad?
Well, I've spent 12 years working at a brokerage in Canada, at a financial company that we took from a startup to being really number one on the market, by many parameters. So I've seen many things in that company. I essentially grew the data and analytics posture there. I was the head of the data and analytics, being responsible for everything from engineering to management, a number of different areas. And I would say there are lots and lots of things that I saw that can go wrong with data, but main thing is, I think, the adoption of technology grows so fast, right? So there is this disconnect between thinking in terms of data life cycles, this kind of keeping the central data model, and companies wanting to move fast to adopt new systems, new products, new services.
Yeah.
And so when you have one database or a handful of databases, things are very simple. When you have hundreds of databases and hundreds of systems, which is the case all large financial organizations, essentially 40 to 70% of your IT costs become integration and maintaining this kind of different data marts, data warehouses, data lakes, all of this infrastructure, just to synchronize the main points around your data.
Yeah.
So for me, it's probably easier to name something that I didn't see, because I've seen so many things in the financial world, and not just at the company I worked at. I've seen how it worked in the banks in Canada and with a few clients that I consult. Rarely in real life things work out perfectly because of people.
That's true.
Because there are always people that are coming and going, and there are political wars, turf wars on top of at that kind of top of the organizations. So those things, they are, I think, like people problems are number one reason for any failures in the data world. And I guess the companies that are good at overall, accountability, companies that are good at change management, driving the change from top down the org, they do well with data and analytics related initiatives. They do well with digital transformation programs, things like that. And companies that have a bit of like a political turmoil, which is kind of most probably mid-sized, and obviously like all the large organizations, they have that component. So it comes to people. So organizations that are lucky to have very charismatic and dedicated and focused leaders who are visionary and who can align people around them to move this agenda, they're way ahead of companies that keep going through this like turf wars and keep going through, day to day, trying to kind of chase the things in different directions. I would say if the company makes a conscious decision to create a data office, like have a chief data officer reporting to the CEO, and it makes a conscious decision to align. So this office, it essentially aligns all the other functions in the organization, like between IT and business. I hate that division, by the way, but like different functions in the organization. The only thing that they share is data. They share the same data about the customers, vendors, partners, suppliers, products. So this is very, very important that everybody speaks the same language. It's very important that everybody follows the same rules, same principles, especially people who are modifying the computer, especially people who are building systems or building processes, especially people that have the power to change the rules of how data is generated or captured. So these need to be aligned.
And have you encountered any organizations that, I mean, they must be out there, but I'm just asking about your experience, that put data first to the extent that, you mentioned about people, coming and going in a company. Sometimes people are leaving, maybe the culture is slowly shifting. So have you noticed any organizations that are data first, or at least they have a set of principles and we're like, these are our principles and we're not deviating away from them regarding data science?
Yes, for sure, there are such corporations. They're on the smaller side. So I know a couple of companies that are relatively small, like few hundred people, but their CDO is really the key person in the organization. And data is very clearly the asset number one on everybody's mind. And that doesn't matter the role in the organization. So they have trainings as part of company onboarding that make people aware of everything they need to know about the data landscape and how to participate in these things. They have very, very strong metadata management posture, like I would say leading metadata management posture. In some cases, organization, it's almost like your business is coded in metadata, but they have a very, very firm grip on absolutely all the data that's generated inside the org. So all the systems and applications and processes, they are mandated, for instance, to publish to a common metadata repository in a unified format. And so publishing metadata and reading metadata is a mandated activity throughout the organization. So I have a few examples. On the large company side, I think it's just like too much politics to align everybody at the top. But I think everybody realizes the value of data today. It's just a matter of making things more efficient.
And can I ask you something, for those of us who maybe are not familiar with this? What do you define by metadata?
Well, short answer is metadata is data about data. It's all the different attributes that describe data, what it means, how is it used. where is it kind of coming and going from. So information called lineage, the relationships between data. There are different types of metadata. There are like huge articles on Wikipedia about metadata.
Yeah.
But a very, very simplified answer is that you can compile this data about data into like a large knowledge graph that essentially describes how your all the other data in the organization, like all your different databases, your different data pipelines, systems, and information about roles and responsibilities on that data is also metadata, like who's responsible, who are the owners, people responsible for modifying the systems. And I'm not a fan of kind of the owner terminology, but different roles that people play essentially.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks. I think this has been, fairly enlightening for many executives and other kinds of professionals dealing with data. Before we go, do you have any like general comments or anything to add?
Not really. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great chatting with you, Stelios, and I encourage everybody just to invest more in making their organizations more data aware. So invest in data literacy throughout the org, train more people in various disciplines when it comes to data, and most importantly, have a strategic approach to how you're dealing with data. Have a plan, have that will help you align all the various great minds around your organization.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, Ruben. I completely agree with you. This is something which I've been promoting through my own work because, as a data scientist, as I was saying earlier to you before this call, that what I've noticed is that many times companies want to work with me or they want to work with data scientists in general, but then they have not made the right steps in order to work with data or a data scientist in the right way. And I think that as companies understand this need and the challenge around creating a data-centric culture, data strategy will become more and more accepted. So my personal opinion is that we may be definitely not in the late stages of adoption. If I'd say we're a bit like in the early stages of adoption. So data strategy, what we do is a bit of a niche, but we know that it's going to become more popular because it's so valuable, right?
Yeah. Well, every business is a data business today. That's it.
Correct.
There's
no
no
matter the
going
size
back.
as well. Could be a startup,
Yes.
can be a big company. Yeah.
It's whether you realize it or not. There's companies that realize it and approach it strategically. They are much better positioned to outcompete everybody else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's 100% true. So for anyone who's listening, if you're running your own business or if you're involved on the executive level or in other levels, like maybe you're just a product manager in whether it's a startup or a big organization, hopefully some of the things we discussed have resonated with you, because it's very difficult for anyone to say that they're not handling data. Like you're saying, every business is a data business by definition, because the more the data is becoming easier and easier to produce, but also there are products now being created around data and services around data, which make it easier for any kind of business to do something with this data, right? So data essentially can provide an advantage to any business, and eventually, if you're not going to do it, then your competitors will do it. And what I've seen with my own work, at least, is that quite often things like data strategy help a lot avoid leaving value on the table, right? Like you look into what you did 3 years ago and you're like, oh, I should have done things in a different way because this and this, happened. And, basically we could be in a better spot now.
Yeah. Well, you're doing an absolutely fantastic job evangelizing this concept and, spreading the light.
Yeah, well, it's I'm a firm believer in the power of data science, and then I realized that quite often many of the problems that businesses face, they're not data science problems per se, they're data strategy problems.
Yeah, and even
Okay.
they're not even data strategy problems. They're like people thinking problems.
Yeah, exactly. It relates to the human factor. Great. So if someone
Yeah.
wants to find more about you, where should they go? Like Twitter, website?
I'm active on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
My company's name is Infocratic, and the website is infocratic.io, or just Google it. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm most active there. I also run a weekly data strategy club on a Clubhouse platform, and that's pretty much everywhere where I'm active.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Ruben. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everyone. Make sure to go to the datascientist.com for more content around data science, AI, and blockchain. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.